Good evening.
Hello, Jason.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Tony had a conflict with tonight's time, so he's not going to be joining us tonight, but he will be with us next week.
You look good, Bill.
Yeah, thanks. What happened to your beard?
Drunk. Just thought of, just for a change.
I still have mine.
Yours looks good, Holly, always.
Thank you, darling.
Matches your hair.
Yeah, yeah. Gray and straight.
Mhm.
What a
Holly,
beautiful day. Yeah.
It's very exciting to see everyone is diligently working on their hay bales. This is going to be the best ever.
I hope so. Our guys finished painting, I think, painting them all today. So I will be out with my paint cans tomorrow. But there's some cute ones already. Especially that turkey.
Thank you.
Ed, your screen is hazy.
He did that on purpose.
Cigar smoke.
You're probably right.
Or he didn't want us to see his wrinkles.
He didn't have any wrinkles.
Oh, okay.
Bruce, my screen's a little hazy too.
Can't see it all.
Yeah,
Turn the lights on.
Okay,
um,
Jason, it's 1:06. If we'd like to go ahead and get started with it, with your summation.
Okay. There's a couple more people coming in. Let's see. All
Okay,
right. Let's see. Okay, let's see. I think I'll do like I did earlier today, just let folks in as they're coming in. But
Okay.
Madam Mayor, Council, this is a public hearing. The mayor has requested that I give a brief overview before the public has the opportunity to ask any questions. Also, if anybody wants to unmute themselves, they can ask versus texting, but I will definitely do my best to answer both. But just to dive right in real quick, we have drafted what we feel is a responsible budget for the 2022 fiscal year for the general fund, the enterprise fund, and the marketing fund. For the general fund, the proposed or anticipated revenue is $1,380,459. I think I would have that memorized by now. That is an increase over last year's budget by about 259,000. However, there is some diversification with that. The county did reassess all properties this year. Of course, we all know there's been an increase. And even though we're holding the millage rate the same, that equates to about $88,000 in increases. There's about $80,000 in anticipated revenue to sell some of the surplus properties. The city does own several properties that are desirable. We do have potential buyers. We are working through that process to get those appraised and get those back on the tax rolls. Also, there's some American Rescue funds as well as LMIG money that makes up that difference. As far as the expenditures, there is a presentation for anybody. It's on the city website as far as the PowerPoint on how that money will be spent. First off, let me back up just 1 second. The diversification is 73% of our revenue is property taxes, 12% charges, 7% investments, 5% grants, and then 3% miscellaneous. And for each each major department within the general fund administration. The total budget proposed is 280,594. Buildings and grounds, 148,800. Police, 399,996. Fire, 93,205. Roads, 376,150. Miscellaneous, 81,714. That's everything from Bob Powers to economic development to recreation, courts, etc. And that breakdown in terms of percentages, 20% of that is admin, city hall, 11% building grounds, 29% police, 7% fire, 27% roads, and 6% miscellaneous. There is some proposed capital expenditures of that $90,000. $60,000 is anticipated to go towards the renovation of the visitor center to create council chambers in the visitor center. 30,000 of that is for a proposed third pickleball court. 23,000 of that is for roads for a Kubota tractor that can also have a snowplow attachment. And then approximately 8,000 of that is for the annual lease purchase of one of the squad cars for the police department. And I'll stop there and give everybody the opportunity to ask questions.
Jason, I'd like to add that you were asked to include expenditures for possible future projects, which you just mentioned a few seconds ago, in order to establish their fiscal feasibility on whether we needed to go forward with council and committee workings and public input and so forth. So I wanted to throw that in first. Thank you. Any council comments or questions? Okay. Do we have any?
There is
questions?
a
Go ahead.
question from the from participants. It would be helpful if you gave everyone an overview of the city budget policy, beginning with the department head's request through the adoption of the budget. Going back probably at least 3 months ago, started sitting down with, at the time, James Holbrooks. As you know, James is no longer here. Now it's Jerry Shope as well as Chief Estes. We looked at expenditures, looked at over the years, kind of what trends, and we basically use that to try to be a base or to try to anticipate what we need to budget for. Obviously, some expenditures are going up, fuel, materials, and so we take that into consideration. So really, there was participation from the department heads, but by and large, this budget was written here in administration.
I don't know who answered that who asked that question, but did that
was,
answer your question?
Mr. Ponikowski.
Okay. Al, did that answer your question?
Karen Fleming.
Says that doesn't explain the policy. I really don't know how to explain that any further than that. We definitely have tried to be as transparent as possible in this process. The question was posed, when was the first budget workshop held with the city council? I would guess we probably first started having conversations again about 3 months ago. We've been, it's been very informal, but we've tried our best to keep the mayor and council informed in every step of the process.
There was a workshop scheduled, though. Just don't remember the date.
Do you remember what the attendance was at that workshop?
Very sparse.
It would have been probably myself, the mayor, Councilmember Morley, Councilmember Oliver.
No, there was a public workshop. It was a workshop scheduled.
Yeah, there definitely was a public workshop for that.
There's a request for minutes of those meetings. We will have to try to find that and address that at a later time. We'll do our best to get that out.
Do we have any other questions or comments, Jason?
Just look to, if they need to do an open records request, we'll definitely see if we can get that out. There are, so I'm just, as they're coming through, I'm trying to answer those.
Okay,
And again, if anybody wants to unmute and ask questions, they can. At this
We know
time,
that-
Madam Mayor, there's no new questions, but.
okay. Well, we know as per state law that cities must prepare a budget and hold 3 public hearings for public input. We had our first one this morning at 9:30. This is our second one, which is state mandated that we do one in the evenings. And then we have our third hearing is next Tuesday at 9:30. The proposed budget must be made available for public inspection, and we had that available at City Hall. Also, it is on our website. We're offering it by Zoom, which we explained earlier this morning was due to extensive COVID-19 infections that are in our city and among our staff. So we had asked the city attorney and our GMA rep if we can hold meetings on Zoom, and they said certainly it was legal. I don't know what else we needed to say. Anything else? What were the dates of the public budget workshops? The first one was this morning at 9:30. This is the second one. The third one will be held Tuesday, October the 26th at 9:30.
Madam Mayor, they're asking for differentiation between hearings and workshops.
Workshops are not mandated by law, well, where hearings are.
Let me mute that. Let's see, we're getting some feedback. I do not see any new questions at this time.
Certainly, if anybody else has questions that they think of later, they certainly can contact our city manager, Jason, and he will be glad to answer any questions, clarify any issues with the budget. I think it's pretty straightforward, and Jason, you did a wonderful job on the budget. Thank you for preparing that for everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess
Am I on here? This is Al Pointkowski.
I
Yes,
can
we
hear
you,
you.
sir.
Okay. Jason, I had asked you, and I had to get away from my computer and get into my phone. because my computer doesn't allow me to speak. I had asked, I thought it would be a good idea if you presented the city's written policy relative to the budgets. I understand that, if I remember correctly, that it's supposed to start in June, and then there are different phases, a timeline ending in the adoption of the budget. I thought it'd be a good idea if you laid that out for everybody, and then detail what you did, because it's the city manager's responsibility to put the budget together, and then indicate to the public who you met with for any changes, that if there were any changes done, and who inputted them. And I also would take exception with some of the public meetings that were held, because I'm not aware of any public meeting that was held.
There was not any workshops held, as I understand the question. We began this budget process probably around June, July initially. Again, I started having conversations with, at the time, James Holbrooks, who was no longer with us, Chief Estes. As far as meeting with the public, I've made myself available at any time. We've had the budget on the website now for a couple of weeks, maybe longer. And anybody that's emailed me or asked me questions or wanted to meet, I did meet with a concerned citizen last week for about an hour and a half, and we went line by line through the budget, answered any questions, and would be glad to do that if anybody would like to meet away from the meeting here.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm not willing to do that, because I believe that there's a sunshine law in the state of Georgia, and that until there was a notice in the paper a couple of weeks ago, and that was at the Clayton Tribune on page A5 and A8, then nobody knew that there was this budget coming up and what the details were. So for somebody to come in and ask what's going on, it's pretty difficult if you're not sharing what's happening. And again, this is public taxpayer money, and I think that should be discussed in public, not one-on-one. Now, I guess the question that I would have, Jason, of you is, did you put this budget together consistent with the city's written policy for adopting a budget?
To the best of my abilities, sir. I don't have that policy in front of me right now to pull it up, but to the best of my ability, and it's been well advertised. We've presented it to our city attorney. It's been
Okay, it was advertised 2 weeks ago in the Clayton Tribune. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And that's well advertised. Okay, you're saying that's well advertised. I dispute that. The city has chimp mail, or whatever it is, MailChimp. And I don't believe the city has utilized that to share that information with the taxpayers. So if they didn't get the Clayton Tribune,
I can comment on that. It definitely went out on MailChimp. It was in the paper and it went out on MailChimp.
okay, and then I'll have to go back to what's the city's written policy as to when all this stuff is going to happen, because my recollection is there is a city policy that is written relative to the adoption of a budget that starts in June with the department heads with their request. And then there's other steps. There's a timeline. And what you're referring to, Karen, is a notice that went out after the notice that was put in the newspaper. And I believe the notice that was put in the newspaper had to do with the fact that City Hall was closed because of COVID.
No, on the ones that was advertised in the public hearing went out at least a week before the actual hearing. I can go through and get dates, but any kind of notices don't go out to approximately a week beforehand. Can't put them out there 2 weeks ahead of time. There's a time frame that you can put them out, but this is for the public hearing. If we're talking about the same meetings, get together.
Well, the public hearing was this morning, is the one right now, and is the one next Tuesday. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the one for next
Okay,
Tuesday.
that's all I need. Those
Yeah.
are what you're
Well, I
saying.
just want to make sure we're on the same page, because as far as getting the notices out, that was done in a timely fashion.
There are a lot of people in the city that didn't know anything about this, so, and the budget is a one-time annual event. And I believe that the talk in the community is that there's a total lack of transparency. And what I'm asking, and I haven't received an answer, is what is the city's budget policy and what is the timeline for it? And what work sessions, which nobody seems to know, but seems to think we had a work session relative to the budget. When did that happen?
We have a financial policy, Jason, if you will pull that up after this meeting and get Mr. Pointkowski a copy of that, I think that will answer his questions.
Well, actually, Mayor Style, I would prefer that the taxpayers, all of the taxpayers, have the right to know what that is.
Well,
Not Al
certainly.
Pointkowski, everybody. Because nobody seems, at least everyone I'm talking to, doesn't know what's going on. And it'd be helpful if they had some idea of what the policy is to determine if the council is following the city policy. And that's a start. That's a start before we even get into the budget itself. There's I don't have the number right in front of me because I'd be getting into a feedback, but the actual projected budget, year-end budget, is several $100,000 more than what was approved. And the question associated with that would be, has there been any budget amendments made?
There's not.
Well, I have my paperwork in front of me. According to the way I read the budget, the projected year end is $136,623 over the approved budget. And yet you're telling me there has been not one amended budget. And this is just the first, there's other stuff here, so bear with me. What is that? Where's the $136,623? Where does that come in? How does that come into play?
The city has been very good stewards of taxpayer dollars. We have a surplus.
That's a surplus. It says that the 2021 approved budget, total revenue, $1,121,273. The year end anticipated is $1,257,896. I don't know how that gets read to be the city being good stewards and saving money. That's more than what was in the approved budget.
I was not involved in that budget, sir, but it appears that we took in more revenue than we had anticipated.
Is that what the audit's going to show? That it appears that we took in more. Who's keeping the records here? Did you do the budget, Jason?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. So where did the extra money come from?
Fees, do you have the copy that's on the website, sir? It details the totals, the taxes, the intangibles, that there is a detail line by line of what comprises that $1,257,000.
So
That's revenue. 1,257,000 is revenue.
that's revenue. That's Where-
Expenditures is 1,062.
where,
Million
where's,
62.
where's it coming from? Where did you get the extra revenue? Did you take anything from any other budget? As an example, the police department. I understand that $25,000 was taken from the police department to help fund a bucket truck. Is that understanding accurate?
I have no knowledge of that. As I look through here, to give you an example, in local grants for 2021, it was anticipated that we would take in 35,000. We actually took in $100,974. So there would be $65,000 right there. It was anticipated about 5,500 in court fines. We're on track to take in about $32,000 in court fines. So there's about another 25,000 right there. So there's 100,000 plus or minus 90,000 of that.
All right, let's move on to revenue. Rent, West. Supposed to, it's a decrease with West and Calderon.
It's my understanding, sir, that she was given a reduction in rent due to COVID and trying to keep her costs low. Which would be why that,
How about West?
his has remained the same.
It remains the same. It was $4,800 before.
That
Now it's
you didn't budget, Jason, you didn't budget the entire year, did you?
Yeah, I think he's talking about this year's budget, Counselor. With the
2021 approved budget for West was $4,800. What you're projecting for the 2022 budget for West is $2,400.
Oh, okay. Well, the reason for that reduction is that obviously if we redo the visitor center, we're probably looking to start that sometime late spring, early summer, and so they would be moving out. So we would only have half a year rent.
And is that the same thing then that's going on with Calderon, which you said
That's
was
correct.
we cut her rent down because of COVID? Which one is it?
That was done prior to my onboarding. That's just what I was told, sir. But
You did the budget, Jason.
I think
All
we're
right.
talking about two different years here.
That's correct.
Jason, isn't that
I'm-
correct?
I'm looking at the general fund revenue budget for 2022. And
All right, I think Jason was answering your question about the reduction from Calderon. He thought you were talking about the previous year, and that was the rationale for the previous year. Now he's given you the reason for this current budget.
if the reason is that we're going to take the building that we own on 246 and get rid of the tenants that we have and put that and use capital outlay to bring that up to code or whatever somebody needs, so that we can put City Hall in there. My question would be, when was that put to the public as an idea before it was put into the budget?
We've been talking about this for a while, Al, and like I said at the beginning of this meeting, that I asked Jason to include these possible expenditures for possible future projects to establish their fiscal feasibility before going forward with the council, the committees, public input, before we make a decision. So the decision has not been made. As you know, a budget can easily be changed, amended, so that's what he was asked to do.
So we've been talking about that, Mayor Style. Between you and the city manager, or you and a couple of the council members, or is it something that the taxpayers might want to know something about? Because
Well,
you're putting
certainly the taxpayers want to know, and that's what I just said, that we wanted to establish if we could physically do this first before we went into the whole investigation of the possibility of doing it.
Okay.
Also,
So-
I'm looking at your previous question, Al, about our procedures, and I'm looking at the charter and the fiscal financial policies of the city. We have followed them to the letter as far as the budgeting is concerned. We would be glad to send you a copy of that.
Yes, please do.
I will.
Okay, besides a new city hall, I believe it was stated someplace, maybe earlier today, that you're budgeting for 2 part-time people. Don't we already have one of those part-time people, which is the person doing the financial?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
It
so
would
we're,
simply be he would simply be 10 hours a week on average as a part-time employee versus 10 hours a week as a contract 1099 employee.
Mhm.
The other part-time position would be estimated to be a 30-hour per week. Visitor center greeter probably would be working some on Saturdays, help with some of the webmaster social media presence, updating the website, greeting customers, as well as other administrative assistance that they could provide as well.
If we decide to go that way with all the input from the citizens, the committees, and the council.
it's trail maintenance. Is another area that has not been brought forth to any public meeting. And yet it's part of the budget.
I believe
Based
that's
on-
been discussed in several council meetings, Al, the need for that, and that our citizens have asked for us to look into that. I know that we've talked about it in some of our council meetings. Is that correct, Jim?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's see what else we got here. Pickleball.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was the regular council meeting before last that Jason talked about the pickleball. And I believe it was also stated that a lot of people have asked about an additional pickleball court.
Correct.
Who has asked for it?
There is an unofficial group who call themselves the Sky Valley Pickleball Club, Al. It has well over 100 members, and they have talked to Jason about this.
And that again has not been shared at any regular council meeting, and asked for public input from the people who are going to be funding this. Is that correct?
Once again, he did talk about it, and this is the one, these are the 2 expenditures that I described that we wanted to know if we could even talk about doing this before we went into motion and studied it, got public input, got council and committee input before we did it.
It is the public input that is from this citizenry that
Yeah,
of this ever-growing pickleball association that is the driver of the recommendation of that money being put into the budget. So
and we have
there's
not
been
voted.
tons of public input, which is why it's recommended to be there.
So we have, what does that all total up to, Jason, roughly, ballpark figure? City Hall, which we haven't voted on, pickleball, trail maintenance, we're talking a considerable amount of money, and that you're going to have it there, but you haven't voted on it yet. You haven't presented it to the public at a regular council meeting. You haven't had any work sessions relative to this. And what if the public doesn't want it?
This is the first time that I've heard anybody really against this, sir. I mean, again, it's a recommendation from an overwhelming public input that has requested a third court.
Well, are you talking about pickleball, or are you talking about City Hall? Or are you talking about
Pickleball.
trail maintenance?
It's a pickleball.
Well,
trail
I
maintenance.
threw things out there about the City Hall, pickleball, and trail maintenance. Let's go on to another subject. Landscaping. Why the increase?
The increase is actually for the trail maintenance at Mud Creek. We've put in an extra, the Wanamaker contract is, I believe, is approximately $19,000 for all that they do throughout the year. When James Holbrook was here, we did some preliminary numbers to do some maintenance at the Mud Creek Falls. We were looking at around $6,000. So that's why you see it go from 19,000 to 25,000.
So based on what you believe, Jason, another contractor is going to be coming in to do the $6,000 worth of trail maintenance. Is that, would that be correct?
Again, it's an estimate. We did, of course, James is not here. James did the majority of that work, but based on the information that he acquired before he left, our best guesstimate was it was going to be around $6,000 for material, rocks, culverts, etc.
Bill, excuse
so
me,
did-
Bill, could you kind of go over, again, remind Mr. Pointkowski about the entire city survey that was done on needs that the citizenry wanted to see?
Yeah, that survey had several priorities on it. I don't have it in front of me right now, but one of those was the trails.
Mhm.
Then there was some conversation or some desire about more pickleball, et cetera. So there are quite a few.
And also utilizing our asset building on Highway 246. That was all part of that survey results that was done by the mayoral advisory committee, Al. So there has been discussions on it ongoing since the survey.
And
I
with the
think I'm aware
marketing
of-
committee as well.
Pardon?
I think I'm aware of the discussions that have been held at the council meetings
Uh-huh.
and most of the committee meetings.
Mhm.
There seems to be a number of items here that are being budgeted for, but have not been fully discussed. And,
Correct.
and-
That's
and
correct.
actually, if you want to refer to a survey, a few years back, there was a survey done about what the people in Sky Valley wanted, and pickleball wasn't even on the survey, and that's what we got.
I don't know which survey you're referring to, Al, but the one that was done a year and a half ago did include all different suggestions for different amenities, and pickleball, disc golf, and several others were on that survey.
I'm aware of that, Mayor. I'm also aware of the one that was done prior to that time,
Mhm.
where the previous administration had a survey and people, it was not even mentioned that pickleball was in there. And
Is that when you were
pickleball.
were you on the council then, Al?
No,
Is that
that was when your husband was on the council.
true? Correct.
And,
Okay.
and pickleball was what we got, and that was not even on the list. So I'm kind of skeptical about surveys and how you use them and what importance they have depending on who's talking. Another question for you, Jason. Landscaping, Wanamaker. Is Wanamaker taking care of the sign on 246, just up from the overlook?
It's my understanding that he does.
That's a private property owned by the club. Is it legal for taxpayer funds to be used to promote private property?
I believe our attorney addressed that, Al, and it was really on the right of way, and he said, yes, we could do it. If I'm not mistaken, that was also discussed.
Maybe you should check again with the attorney, because I believe if you look at this Raven County zoning map, that is property that Merrill gave to the club. And if you're
We'll
going to try,
check into
no,
that.
if you want to say that's on the right of way and that the city can use taxpayer funds to take care of planting flowers at a sign that says Sky Valley Country Club and Resort or whatever it says, and maintain the grass, then I'm just a little curious as to whether or not that's a legal procedure.
We'll look into that, Al. Do you remember anything about that, Bruce? Since that was part of the special projects committee?
I believe that, and I'll check into it, that the club is partially funding that.
Okay.
Does anybody have any idea as to what's really going on? I mean, it seems like this is like it's like a whack-a-mole here. Who has definite information? Is the club, I mean, Bruce, you were part of that special projects committee that was pushing that. And I believe I spoke to you about that particular thing. The last time I looked at the Raven County maps, that belonged to the club. And it had nothing to do with the right of way. I mean, I could say that the right of way on my property is, I should have somebody from the city come in and trim the hemlocks that are there, because that's on the right of way. Would that be appropriate?
Well, let's stick to the subject. We will
No,
get
there's-
your answer on that particular piece of landscaping. Al, is there anything else?
Well, I'd like the answers to go out to the public, because
We can do that.
Thank you. Going back to West and Calderon, have you already notified them that they're no longer going to be able to rent property there?
They have been,
What was
they have
notified
been
at
notified.
Go ahead. At the end of their leases, yes, we said there was a possibility that the city would need the building back. That was not determined yet, and they were both will be put on a month-to-month lease, and they
Okay.
both agreed.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, for the sake of brevity, well, I'll let it go for right now. There's still another meeting next Tuesday, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Al, may I ask a question? Since you want all your questions answered, can you send me your questions? I'm going through and trying to write everything down just so nothing is missed. I don't know if you've got notes, and maybe we can compare the two, but just to make sure all questions have been answered.
Well, I didn't write down all my questions, Karen. This should be posted so that you can pull it all up by looking at the video, and I'll work
Well,
with you.
I mean, that's what I'm saying, just so we don't miss anything. Just to compare notes.
I'll talk with you about that.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions from any of the other participants, Jason?
Most of the questions is what the gentleman here asked. There was questions about workshops versus public hearings.
According
and
to our policy, we do
yeah.
not have to hold workshops, just 3 hearings.
There's no new questions beyond what's been asked, Mayor, Madam Mayor.
Okay,
Your
Council-
Honor,
yes,
I'd just like to mention that I began attending the public workshops that we had about 2 years before I first ran for office. And I was surprised at how few questions there were, how few serious comments about what we ought to be doing there. Over the course of the year in our council meetings, we've mentioned things that we thought needed doing. And I know that I've certainly asked a number of times about the schedule for the budgeting. And as far as I'm aware, we started that this summer. And this is the first year that I can remember since moving to Sky Valley that we've actually got a budget on schedule in October. And virtually every year it goes into December. There's special called meeting after special called meeting in order to get a budget done by the end of the year. And as far as I can tell, this is the smoothest budget that I've ever seen in Sky Valley. So I'm not, well, that's really just my comment.
Question was asked, is this the first meeting with the whole council to discuss the budget? We did have one this morning.
mhm.
And then the next question is,
Jason did, and Jason sent us copies of the proposed budget and gave us all chances to talk with him and discuss the budget prior to our hearing, correct, Jason?
yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. Said also
And-
says Jim speaks as if the budget has already been approved. And you were speaking of a proposed budget, Jim, is that correct?
Absolutely, and I believe the vote is scheduled for next Tuesday.
Yes.
I'm certainly in favor of the budget we have.
I think it was well thought out and well researched, Jason, along with your department heads and their needs. And you did fulfill what is in our financial policy, and I appreciate all your efforts. And we are here to answer any questions that our citizens have. That's why we're here. And thank you for your questions, Al, and we will get you your answers. And we'll be glad to share that publicly, no problem. Any other comments or questions?
Perhaps Al would be interested to know that as soon as I got the budget and saw that we had the renovation of the building on 246 on it and the pickleball court on it, I called the mayor
You
to
did?
ask about that. And she assured me that, yes, even though we haven't had a considered discussion in council on that, that would certainly be coming.
Yes, it
That
is.
This is in the budget so that if, as some people hope, that goes forward, we'll be able to go ahead and do it.
Correct. We
So,
wanted, yes, we wanted to know the feasibility of it. Yes, financially. That's correct. And we will have a we'll have a great discussion and research, and we'll have input from everybody before we make a decision. Anybody else? Any other council have anything to say? We appreciate all our citizens coming. That's what this is for just frank discussions. And Al, we will get all that information to you as soon as we can. Anything else we need to say? All right, thank you all for attending. We hope to see you next Tuesday at 9:30 at the third hearing. If you have any questions, please contact Jason. He is more than willing to help with answers and find your issues, define your issues. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ollie.
Thank you all.
Night.